Have you ever wondered what would happen if an alien spacecraft crashed into the world of Dungeons and Dragons? Well, in the 1980s, Gary Gygax himself answered that question in this module for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. So join me as we take a look at this famous module and we go behind the screen. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Behind the Screen. I am your humble DM, Tim, and today we'll be talking about Gary Gygax's Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. The Expedition to the Barrier Peaks is one of the modules that actually got me really interested in playing Dungeons and Dragons, and its influence is felt in my games even to this day, with my second long-running campaign being using the spaceship from it as a central focus of the story. However, it's a module that a lot of people know about, but they don't know what it actually contains. They know that there are strange monsters, there's a crashed alien spaceship, there's a cave, you can get suits of power armor, which were fantastic for clerics to get. There are laser weaponries, there is gas masks, gas grenades, just all sorts of really, really interesting alien technology. But no one knows the specifics about it. At least that's what I've come to discover. So in this series, I've decided to run through a lot of the older modules that people sort of know by reputation but don't know the contents of it. And I wanted to start with the Expedition to the Barrier Peaks because it was one of the ones that I was most interested in when I first started playing Dungeons and Dragons. I only started playing in 5th edition, but even with 5th edition I knew about this module. And also the fact that many of you out there have searched up the section in my Tales of Woe about the Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, and so there's definitely some interest of it out there. So let's just dive right in to this module, and I will give you the basic summary of what this module is all about. One of the more interesting things about this book is it isn't primarily a story-based adventure. There is a story to be had in it, but it isn't actually key in the module itself. This was actually based on what was known as a tournament module. What is a tournament module, you may ask? A tournament module was a module designed primarily for conventions, where you would rock up and you would have a stack of character sheets of whatever level was required, and a tournament module was a character meat grinder. I think that's actually one of the reasons that the Tomb of Horrors was invented. The Tomb of Horrors was essentially a middle finger to people that thought, yes, my character is the greatest character in the world. It cannot possibly be defeated. I have defeated everything. I can take down a Tarrasque in a single hit. And so the Tomb of Horrors was invented. Go, oh yeah, well, pff, your character sucks. So that's kind of what the Expedition to the Barrier Peaks was originally designed as. Not so much as just to completely screw over other people's characters, but to give a really difficult challenge. And you were not expected to come out of the story with the same character that you went in with. Or occasionally you would actually play as like 3 different characters. Like it was later on in this, as I describe it, you have a party of 15. So the party itself may have been 15 people sitting around a table or 5 people controlling 3 characters each. So you had spares for when they finally got wiped out, or inevitably got wiped out, however it was that you wanted to say it was. But anyway, let's dive into this and let's read the introduction to the Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. The Grand Duchy of Jeff has recently been plagued by a rash of unusually weird and terrible monsters of unknown sort. This western area, particularly the mountain fastness which separate the Grand Duchy from the dry steeps, has long been renowned for the generation of the most fearsome beasts, and it has been shunned accordingly, save for a handful of hardy souls with exceptional abilities and sufficient wealth to build stout strongholds to ward off the attacks of the predatory creatures infesting the rugged lands thereabouts. Within the last few months, however, a walled town not far distant from the area, and 4 small fortresses as well, were destroyed by mysterious attacks. The remaining barons and lords have preserved in brine several partially decomposed corpses found on or near the sites of the ravaging. While these strange bodies are assumed to have belonged to the forces which were responsible for the destruction, the remains were far too gone to learn anything other than that they were creatures hitherto unknown to even the wisest sages of Jeff. The urgent plea for aid which accompanied these gruesome corpses could not be ignored, and the Grand Duke acted immediately, choosing several of his Taoist henchmen to lead an expedition. He called upon the other powers of the state to likewise furnish their minions for the expedition as well. Thus the Society of Magistrave, the Fellowship of Blinding Light, the Magsman Brotherhood, and the High Lord of Edvartdom also selected the bravest of adventurers and equipped them accordingly to accompany the expedition as their representatives. A total of 15 have assembled beneath the patoned turrets of the Grand Duke's mighty castle near Gonra. There it was learned that several unconfirmed reports have related that the monsters have been disgorged from a gated cave at random intervals. The entrance to this place is high upon a rocky face and sheathed in armor. This protection has purportedly frustrated all attempts to explore the space beyond the metal valve, although several search parties have disappeared, so it is possible they entered and never returned. Your expedition must find out exactly what this cave is, what is causing the monsters to come forth, who is responsible, and how we can prevent further incursions. In addition, any other information regarding this mysterious locale, its strange denizens, magical devices, or unusual weaponry is highly desirable. His High Radiance, Owen III, has assured all of the concerned parties that whatever information is gained will be given to all, and wealth found will be shared accordingly to the contribution each individual or representative group makes to the overall success of the expedition. If necessary, the Grand Duke has vowed to send forth an army to lay waste to the offending place and extinguish every living thing therein. Should your expedition not meet with total success, this step will be considered, but His High Radiance personally doubts such extreme measures will be required, considering the strength of the expedition and the ability of its members. The Grand Duke feels assured that you will certainly locate the person or thing responsible for the troubles plaguing Jeff and eliminate him, her, or it from the face of the land. Your party set forth from Gorna a fortnight ago, and for the past 2 days have been climbing high into the crags of the barrier peaks. Last night was spent in the keep, for the only baron remaining in the area, and he was fulsome glad of your company. This morning, as the eastern horizon turned from pearl grey to rosy pink, a score of the baron's retainers guided the expedition towards the unknown area. It is now afternoon, and you have set up camp in a hidden dell but a few bow shots from the strange entrance. The men-at-arms have been detailed to guard the supplies and the mounts at the camp while you go onwardly immediately. They will await your return for 4 days before returning to the keep. Gathering your personal gear, you are now climbing the steep slope of the dell's north side, passing the rim and forcing your way through a dense growth of trees and undergrowth, and there, across the field and beyond the rocky rise, awaits adventure! Please be advised, there are spoilers ahead. You have been warned. And so, as you can see, it's a really unique setup for this campaign. As you would expect, being a sci-fi fantasy setting in a sci-fi setting in a fantasy setting. Yeah. But one of the things I really like about that introduction is the fact that they didn't go about coming up with really bizarre fantasy-like names. It was just Jeff. The Duchy of Jeff. There is Duke Jeff. There is trouble in his duchy. Go and help him out. And so you are tasked to go and do that. The next section goes on to explain what you will encounter. This is like for the DM's eyes only, or what to describe, what to get your head around what is actually going on. And it explains that a large exploration vessel was traveling through space, and then they suddenly contracted a virus. Maybe they stopped off on a planet and picked up something from the various flora and fauna that they have on board, or it was something that maybe the ship was fleeing from. Maybe it was, their ship was transporting refugees away from their home planets to colonize a new world because the virus had taken over their home world. It's never really that specific, but you can leave that to your own imagination. And as the journey progressed, the virus began to take hold, and in order to save the rest of the ship, because the interesting thing is that this isn't the entire ship, it's just one section of it. So this thing is massive. Right, so the whole part that you're exploring is just one of the modular sections of the vessel. They cut it loose and let it float through deep space, abandoning all those sick because they couldn't find a cure for the virus. And then this section of the vessel fell through a black hole and ended up on the land of Greyhawk. And then when it landed, it created a massive hole in the ground, and then a rock slide buried it. And that's where these mountains came from. The whole mountain range was because this ship hit the ground and slid along, causing the massive piles of rock, and then the stones caved in over it, and that was the creation of the barrier peaks. But what also happened is that over time, tremors in the earth shook loose some of the rock, exposing the entrance, but also triggering the computer inside the ship, the secondary computer, because the primary one's on the main one, and triggering a signal to offload the cargo. And that's where all the monsters are coming from, because every so often there's a small quake, it triggers the signal. Everyone, all the worker robots are on board. They follow their programming. They find the next batch of creatures that are to be offloaded from the menagerie. They go and take it to the cargo hold. They've cleared all the debris away from the cargo area, and they just throw it out the door and leave it to its own devices. A lot of the creatures die while they're out there, but many of them thrive, and that's where a lot of these weird and wonderful creatures are coming from. Some of them have, interbred with other species that existed on Greyhawk and created whole new monsters. So there's a whole range of concepts that come into play here. And there's a lot of new creatures that you'll come across as well throughout the campaign. At least they may be new to you, but this is like where they were introduced. They may not be new to you, but this is where they were introduced. And so when you get to the door, you find the door is open. It's waiting for you. Because of the way that the ship is malfunctioning, the door will stay open, I believe, for 14 hours, I think it says, and then it will shut for 7 hours. The day-night cycle on board this ship is 14 light and 7 dark, because the lights will actually switch on periodically to do night and day. So there was the night shift and the day shift for the ship. But when you get into the vessel, you find it's all iron door walls and corridors and very strange things. Plenty of spider webs and all sorts of stuff in there. And one of the things that I really like about this campaign as well is that they did a really good job in describing the technology in a way that someone from a medieval society would understand it. So, for example, when you reach the central computer core, it's literally a small tower with a massive keyboard across the top of it. And the book describes it as an altar, because that's the simplest way to describe it. And there are 3 dead skeletons around it with uniforms that are all molded away. Some of them have medallions on them. So, they describe it as strange jewelry that you don't recognize, but of course it has a gold value, so you can sell it off later on after you've bothered to loot their skeletons. It also describes that the platform, the altar has glass slits in it, which are the little lever sections. They don't really understand that they're the for turning the volume up on the controls or different switches. There's glass crystals, which are the lights. When you push a lever, it lights up, indicating something. And there's like a whole series of random things listed here, like on a D12 table for when they just start fiddling with the buttons to see what they do. You can shut down all the androids on this level. You can power down all the police robots, or you can turn them on if they were already off. You can cause a full alert, which means you lock all the doors in the place, and then all of the security drones go on high alerts and will attack anything that moves. You can turn the gravity off. Or reverse the gravity, so now everything's stuck to the ceilings. There's a whole bunch of little random things, but also, I think once one of those things fires off, there's a minor fire and you can't do it anymore. So you get one chance to do something crazy, and then the panel bursts into flames from the short circuit because it's been sitting there for so long. One of the other areas, probably of note, at least in the first level, is the medical bay. Everyone remembers the medical bay, at least those that have been through it, because there's two rooms in the medical bay. The first room you meet is a very helpful nurse, which you can't understand the language of. However, it does specify that if you use comprehend languages or tongues, I believe, you can comprehend what they're saying. So there is a way to understand, but they'll actually pick up on your language within a couple of turns as well. It's actually part of the programming. It actually lists in there. So that's provided you keep talking to them, they'll be able to pick up on your language and use it to communicate with you. So, like I said, very fantastical technology. You can also find floating around the ship universal translators, like in Star Trek, so which gives you comprehend languages at will, which is really, really awesome. But the nurse robot, she will attempt to heal you as soon as you come in, and will also cure you of any disease that you have. Unfortunately, not the disease that wiped out the crew, because they never found the cure for that. It's actually still hanging around. But the next room is the dangerous one, because there's another robot in there with a massive surgical bay, and he's malfunctioning. And so the moment you go in there, he attempts to grapple the first person in there, shove him down on a surgery table, and completely autopsy the body. So that's the way you can get instantly killed, is just by walking in there and not getting your companion up off the table, or separating off from your group, getting pinned down and completely dissected by this thing. So there's both fascinating and horrifying things all to be had on this ship. One of the other things, like I was saying, the virus on the ship. This is probably one of the cooler aspects of it, is that the virus has mutated, or at least it's mutated from the radiation, because there's actually areas on the ship which have radiation leaks on them, so you can actually get poisoned by radiation effects in this game as well. But after everyone died, the virus mutated due to the radiation and became Veggie Pygmies. This is where the Veggie Pygmies came from. The Veggie Pygmies being the small plant creatures that populate large sections of the jungles of Chult. And they've set up an entire society on the first deck of the ship that you start off on. And you can meet their chiefs. They've got shrieker mushroom patches set up all around the place to set them off with alarm. They've got their thornies there. There's chieftains. There's like an entire tribe, an entire culture of Veggie Pygmies, all on this very first level of the ship. And they don't like interlopers. If you actually go to the dining area and attempt to eat some of the food, most of which will kill you instantly if you eat it, because it's all gone bad. Some of which will give you super strength because it's mutated in a way that makes it good, but most of it is bad. But if you eat it, and the Veggie Pygmies are present, they get really angry at you and will attack you. Like, they'll run off and get their friends, and they'll start attacking you because you're eating their food. and they have nowhere else to get supplies because they don't want to leave the ship. At least the ones that are here don't. Um, and then you get to proceed down to the lower levels. The next level down after that is the tween decks. It's like the Jeffries tube area in Star Trek. This is like a massive area with only really one major encounter here, which is an intellect devourer, which is dangerous enough as it is, but it can't actually teleport like an intellect devourer normally could. It's actually stuck here because there's interdimensional shielding between the decks. So teleportation between decks doesn't happen. And there's like a big hole in this deck which leads to the next level where the fight had occurred between a crew member and the intellect devourer. The intellect devourer was a creature that they picked up on another planet on their journey through space. Why you'd want to take it, I have no idea, but what do I know? The third and fourth floors are really one floor. The third floor is like an observation deck. It's like a ring surrounding this the next deck below it, and that is the aquariums, the menagerie, and the arboretum level. And this is a jungle. It's an interior jungle. It's basically a giant greenhouse. It is filled to the brim with everything that will kill you. There are shambling mounds, there are strangle vines, there are vampire plants, there are gas bats. These are bats that, as they sound, they're filled with gas. They swarm you, and if you attack one of them, they explode. There's web birds. These are birds that leave like spider web strands behind them, and they tangle you up as they go through. But two of my favorite encounters in this entire campaign are on this level. One of them is this guy. Where is he? There we go. There he is. It's this guy, the Froghemoth. This is where this guy came from. He's actually very territorial of the whole jungle area, and he is swimming about inside the water, and if you get near the water, he'll jump out and try to eat you. Even if you manage to get rid of him, there's phosphorescent fish in the water that will attempt to kill you. I think there's like 100 swarming fish, and it's like in the book here, because back in advanced D&D, you had things like save versus death at -4 or instantly die. That's one of the things that these fish can do for you. So you think, oh cool, goldfish, and then you're dead. The other one of my favorite encounters in this whole thing is the wolf in sheep's clothing. And I've never seen the wolf in sheep's clothing used in any other campaigns, or even heard of it being used in any other campaigns. I'm fairly certain it is unique to the expedition to the Barrier Peaks. And the wolf in sheep's clothing is a tree stump with a rabbit on top. And the rabbit is the lure. The tree stump is the creature, and the creature is actually it's almost like a mimic, actually, really, to describe it. Just a very different version of it. It's like if a mimic was a roper that was also a plant, if that makes sense. But there's also ropers in here as well, so what do you want? But what this thing does is that in the jungle areas, there's a whole bunch of little bunny rabbits, and you can roll for random encounters. You can come across little baboon creatures, you can come across lizards, you can come across snails, you can come across rot grubs. These are, just grubs that eat through your armor and just, burrow into you and just eat you from the inside out. Very, very nasty creatures. But you can roll up rabbitoids, they're called. They're literally just bunny rabbits with little horns on, which again are in Chult. But these are harmless creatures, so they bounce up to you, and you can either just kill them or they just scatter and run away. But the way it describes the wolf in sheep's clothing is it says that when they encounter it, roll a dice as if to say there's a random encounter, look disappointed, and then describe or show them the picture. And I'll put the picture up so you can see. What they see before them is a little rabbit sitting on a stump, and they either go up and kill it, but if they do, the wolf in sheep's clothing reveals itself and attacks them. Really, really cool encounter. It's just one of those things that, when people get bored with mimics, or one of the things that makes people really paranoid about, the harmless things. But if they're doing a tournament module or the expedition to the Barrier Peaks, they should never expect for anything to be what it seems. And then the floor after that is the final floor, which is the recreation deck, and this has got a performing arts theater, like a theater with a stage and curtains. There's a gymnasium. There's a swimming pool and more cafeterias and all sorts of stuff scattered about the place. And this, again, is another one of the more interesting encounters, because in here, hanging out in the swimming pool, is what's known as an Eye of the Deep. The Eye of the Deep is a underwater variant of a Beholder. And again, I've never seen one of them used in any other campaign, but there it is, which is very, very cool. But probably the most interesting encounters on this level are the weightlifting robot, the fencing robot, the boxing robot, and the karate robot. These are malfunctioning psycho androids that will attempt to work out with you. The bodybuilder robot, he comes out and says, "Come on, Chief, you gotta lift those weights." And he starts throwing barbells at you. And so you're getting pummeled with, 50-pound barbells being hurled across the room at you. He goes, "Oh, come on, you gotta work up a sweat. Yeah, get into it." And you start just throwing these weights at you. And if you can manage to defeat him or just run away from him, you've also got the fencing robot, which come in and he just, is malfunctioning. He thinks that everyone is there to learn how to fence, especially if you have a sword, which a lot of adventurers will have. And so he'll attempt to fight with you, but his rapier is a stun weapon. So if he stabs you with it, you get electrocuted with electricity, which adds an additional element to trying to deflect his hits. The karate and the boxing robot are simple enough. They just try to beat you up, but they both brag about their martial fighting style being the best martial fighting style, or they're like the best trainers out there. So there's an interesting caveat that if you tell one of the other robots that they think the other person's fighting style is better, they'll fight each other and kill each other. So you don't have to worry about dealing with them. But after you've done all of that, the coolest encounter that you'll come across in this level, this is like the second to last major encounter on this level, is what I call the Techno Mind Flayer. And this is a Mind Flayer that has either been trapped on the ship for a while, or came in through a different entrance through the Underdark, or came in the same way you did before you got here. But he's been looting stuff, and so he's wearing a suit of... he's actually wearing one of the wetsuits that you can pick up in the area. He's also got a blaster pistol, gas and stun grenades, and a massive torch, as well as all of his psychic powers. So if you think that Illithids couldn't get any more dangerous with the fact that they, can just melt your brain with their brain and then suck that brain out of your head or convert you into one of them, now you've got to deal with one with a laser rifle. So probably one of the cooler campaign monsters out there. But after you've gone through all of that, and here I'm just rambling through all the different encounters, but like I said, this is very much a dungeon crawl, so you'll be coming across these things for the most part. But once you've gotten through all of that, the final area, or the way out, because it's a lot more difficult to go back up, because a lot of the pneumatic tubes that you can use to change levels, they seal off once you go down. So once you've gone down, you can't go back up, so you can't get out the way you came in, but you can get out the way that the monsters have been getting out. And on this level, you'll find a cargo area with the worker droids getting ready to offload the latest monster from the most recent activation of the computer core, and that is a bullet. And when you enter the area, they'll shove the bullet out the cargo bay door, and then since you're there and they're malfunctioning, they'll attempt to offload other unwanted cargo, being you. And so they'll shove you out the door to fight the bullet, and if you try to get back in, they just keep pushing you out until they can seal the door, and that's how you get out of the campaign. But So, if you manage to get through all of that, you can report back to Jeff and let him know that they can send the soldiers in. You can let them know what to expect and how to get back out. Or if you really feel the need, and if you are high enough and skilled enough, you can just kill everything that's on there regardless. But Tim, I hear you say, I really want to play this campaign, but I only play 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. I don't play advanced D&D, and I don't want to have to learn. Well, there is a way out, because the place that I got this from is a website called the Dungeon Masters Guild, or the DM Guild, and they have a conversion guide. So this book, I don't think it costs a great deal. It's one of those things where you can pay whatever you like. The Dungeon Master Guild website is a community-based partner program with Wizards of the Coast, so it's all official licensed stuff. You can get print on demand, which is actually where I got my version of the Apocalypse Stone from. I just got the PDFs of this and just got them printed at the local print shop because I didn't want to have to wait for them to show up. But you can also get these printed up for yourself. So, if you're wanting to do a 5th edition version of the Expedition of the Barrier Peaks, I would highly recommend getting yourself a copy of this. And this just goes through all of the different levels and explains how to go about how to go about using them in 5th edition. So, for example, let's just go to the Botanical Gardens, Rookery, and Menagerie page. As you can see here, it has the setup here for the Wandering Monsters. It has the tiers. It says as written, small animal burrows as written. But if you want to talk about things like the globe palms that are in there, it actually says the fluid inside is most nauseating, and any creature splashed will spend the next 3 rounds vomiting and will gain the poisoned state on a failed DC 15 Constitution saving throw and remain ill until the next long rest. So it just converts all of the 3rd edition rules into the 5th edition equivalents. It also has a very handy thing, because you've also got a lot of the things like the Veggie Pygmies and the Froghemoth, they showed up in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. Now, if you don't have that book, it actually has a converted variant of all of the different creatures that you will encounter in the back, those that are unique to this campaign. Otherwise, it will say, like for the Intellect Devourer, it'll just say, look at Intellect Devourer in the DMG. Same thing with like the Illithid, the Mind Flayer, and all that kind of stuff. But also, what it has here as well is the conversions for all of the technology, because the equipment is probably one of the cooler aspects of this campaign. Who would not like to wear an awesome suit of power armor? As you know, a fighter, or even a cleric or a paladin just walking around, and it has the updated rules for the power armor, which is a pretty ridiculous artifact. It gives you an AC of 18 with a max dex bonus of +4. It has a force field of 50 hit points that will recharge on the long rest. But it also gives you a damage threshold of 5, so you can't take any damage less than 5. You can't take anything less than 5. They need to do 5 points of damage to you at minimum in order to hurt you. It explains that it ups your strength to 25. It gives you immunity to poison. It doubles your vision and hearing range. It gives you, you're immune to all atmospheric effects because it's completely sealed, and on it goes. But also for things like the gas grenades and stuff like that, it just says it gives you like a spell equivalent. So this is a really, really good book. The author's name is Michael Mifsud. So I'll put links in the description to the website where you can get both of these books, should you wish to send your friends on an expedition to the Barrier Peaks. Because you can adapt this to any campaign setting that you like. But like I was saying, for Faerun, probably the best location to use for the Barrier Peaks is the country of Chult, because most of these creatures that are native to Chult are native to the expedition to the Barrier Peaks. So do with that as you will. So, I hope you've all enjoyed this rambling review of the expedition to the Barrier Peaks, a campaign that I cannot recommend enough for anyone who is into both Dungeons & Dragons and sci-fi. So please be sure to like and subscribe, and come back for more with your humble DM, Tim, as we peer behind the screen. Bye!